Well, I'm coming to you today from a workshop where I like to spend a lot of my time, if I can, have it available, working on things, repairing things around our acreage. And I'll tell you more in a minute about why I'm doing that. I want to talk to you today about Jesus addressing the topic of servanthood. And this is a topic not that he didn't speak on as one theoretically, he didn't speak on as one who read books about it. Jesus uniquely addresses the topic of servanthood as the creator of all, and the one who knows how he designed us, and the one who has experienced what true servanthood is all about. You know, the Apostle Paul described some things about Jesus to us in Philippians chapter 2. And before we listen to his words, it's good to remind ourselves again of who he is and what the scripture has told us about him so we might listen to him. That's one of the great encouragements what we're walking through here, is listening to the voice of Christ, the teaching of Christ, the Spirit of Christ in our lives above all else. So Jesus on servanthood, he speaks as one with deep experience on the topic. Philippians 2, starting with verse 5. Christ Jesus, who was in very nature God, did not consider his equality with God something to be grasped, held on to, used to his own advantage. His position of greatness and authority, he didn't consider it something to be used to his own advantage, to held on to, grasped. It says this: he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness. When Jesus addresses the topic of servanthood, he's speaking as one who has great experience in this idea of servanthood. In very nature, God humbled himself, took on human form among us, traveled, called disciples to himself to serve them, to serve us, to serve the world. So we pick up the context of Jesus' teaching about servanthood in Mark chapter 9. And this is one of the most inspirational, I think, addresses that God gives in the last 15 to 18 years of my life. This teaching on Jesus has fueled me almost more than any other text that I've studied. They were traveling around. Jesus had these followers that were walking with him. He called 12 to himself, another followed, and he was a rabbi teaching and instructing in the ways of God. And as they were traveling, they came to Capernaum. When Jesus was in the house, he asked them, the followers there, "What were you arguing about on the road?" He must have overheard them arguing, and because he's God, he knows all about what they were arguing about. They kept quiet because on the way, they had argued about who was the greatest. They kept quiet because they knew what they were arguing about was foolishness. It was wrong. There is a bent in the human heart that will take human passions and move them down wrongful directions. And that's what's happening with the disciples here. They know their desires are ramping up against one another. They're getting competitive with one another in a way that doesn't honor God. And so they just kept quiet about it. They didn't say anything, but it didn't stop them from continuing to live out this fleshy, selfish nature. You know, it's interesting in the Bible. The human heart is stained with sin, the Bible tells us. It's deceitful, it's wicked, no one can know it. There's a nature inside of us, because we fell away from God, that rebels against God and pursues its own way. When the evil one tempted Adam and Eve in the garden, tempted them saying, "You will be like God." And that temptation has now welled up in our spirit, our nature, our old nature, where we want to, in a sense, be competitive with God, be our own gods. And that's what's happening with the disciples here. They're bantering with each other about who's the greatest, who's going to be the greatest. It's the ego of young men expressing themselves, but all of us have the challenge of this ego. They're arguing over who would be the greatest. And the arguing doesn't stop. James and John, the sons of Zebedee in Mark chapter 10, came to Jesus privately and asked, "Teacher, will you do us a favor?" Jesus asked them what they wanted, and they answered, "When you come into your glory, please let one of us sit at your right side and the other at your left." James and John took this warped passion and even tried to manipulate privately Jesus, whatever you might brown nose with him, you might be lobbying him. Hey, all of us are jockeying for positions in your kingdom with your power. We know you're a leader. We know you're going to do great things. James and John, we want to be right there beside you in the kingdom. Can you just think about the audacity of the request? Jesus talks to them about the fact that they have no idea what they're asking. But when the other 10 disciples heard this, they were angry, indignant with James and John. You see, what happens when our passions run amok and they move in the wrong direction, they're misdirected, problems are caused in our lives, especially in our relationships. Our passions can run amok, tensions, conflict, anger, all kinds of evil can flow from misdirected passion. So Jesus has to do some discipling here, some teaching, some instructing. The disciples are bickering with each other. They're fighting. They're angry with each other. They're indignant because their egos are bumping up against each other. They're working for control. They're jockeying for position. They're jockeying for power. And all this stuff happens in the world today. And so Jesus gathers them together. And now he's going to address this topic that we're looking at today. These 10, when they heard about it, they were indignant with James and John because Jesus called them all together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as the rulers of the Gentiles, those that are great in the Gentile world, they lord it over their followers. Their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you." Jesus sits them down and contrasts people who are in positions of power in the world and the way they exercise it and jockey for it and want it and use it in abusive and oppressive ways with what should be done. Fascinating. Jesus, if you'll study the ways of God, you'll often see all of the corruption in the world just exposed so easily. The Gentile authorities lord it over them. They issue all kinds of different, restrictive, controlling things. They exercise authority over people. It's a top-down, controlling authority that Jesus is confronting right here. And he's saying to his followers, his people in the world, this is not the way God operates. This comes from the evil one. He's saying, not so with you. And he's going to give them some direction now and instruction into this topic we're looking at today, servanthood. And it's just such a masterful way of moving the passion of these disciples into a God-honoring path. And so he sits them down and he says, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you. That phrase right there is such a beautiful teaching phrase. The disciples weren't admitting that they were arguing over who was great. James and John went public with it, but they were still knowing that this passion, what they were doing, wasn't quite right. It was wrong. But their passion for greatness, their zeal, their zest, that's something God has created human beings with. This passion to be great is planted inside the heart and soul of everyone who's ever been created. It's there because you and I are made in the image of God, and we serve a great God. And so our passion to be great, to do great things is not wrong. It just gets misdirected because of the sinful, selfish nature inside of us. So Jesus is talking to his disciples about their passion, and he said, if you want to be great, which I know you do, I know what you're arguing about. I know the zest and zeal that's in your heart. I want to channel that into the right pathway for your life so it can flourish, so it can grow, so it can come to life, so it can honor God in the most beautiful way. And so he says, if you want to be great. Now, what happens in life is we can grow cynical. We can have that zest and that zeal when we're younger, and life in a fallen world and different things can beat it out of us, and we can just say, hey, mediocrity is fine. We can live with mediocrity. I'll just shoot for half a benchmark. But if that's happened to you, friend, it's not happened because God didn't plant those seeds in there. It's been snuffed out by the evil one, by the pain, the suffering, the sin in a fallen world. You and I were made with a zeal and a passion for greatness. And I have to remind myself, that's why I love this text so much. Jesus is saying to his disciples here, that desire, that want to give your best, to be great, it's something God has put inside of you. If any of you wants to be great. So if you're sitting there today and you're cynical about life, maybe a simple prayer for you would be, God, restore in me the passion to be the best I can, to give my best, to be great. If you want to be great, that desire can come into our hearts from God. You know, you see it in the youth. These young men here had it. When I was younger, I had such a passion in certain areas of life. One in sports, I wanted to be a professional football player. I wanted to be a receiver or a running back for the Dallas Cowboys. They were a great team back then. They met the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. They had Tony Dorsett as a running back, and I would watch Tony Dorsett run, and he ran so smooth, and it could just make cuts and make people miss. And man, I watched that. And so what I did was I took a helmet I had, an old plastic football helmet, and I painted it just like the Dallas Cowboys have it. And I put some my mother had not these throwaway diapers, but some actual material diapers. I put them on my hands and under my shoulders like I had football pads. I made a t-shirt that had a number on it and had my Dallas Cowboy uniform, and I had a football, and I'd go in the yard and I would just dream and think, and I would throw a football in the air and I'd run under it and catch it, and I'd score the winning touchdown, or I'd run it into the end zone. I'd do a victory dance, and just wonder the passion that human beings can have in their hearts. It's unbelievable. And God has given us this because he is a passionate God, and he is a God of zeal. He's a God of zest, and he wants you and I to have it. And he wants us to take all that zeal and channel it in a right way. And that's what he's taking these zealous young men, these passionate young men, and trying to corral them so they can be great in the world and great in God's eyes. If any of you want to become great, you must be a servant. To become great among you, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Very clearly, according to Jesus, servanthood is the pathway to true greatness. Jesus on servanthood. Servanthood takes us down the pathway of greatness. Somehow this inspires me. The desire to be great is there. So channel it into service in the world. This is the pathway. Jesus on servanthood. It's the pathway to greatness. Let's listen to the text. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man, Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus came here into the world to serve and give his life away. And he said to us while he was here, that is the pathway to greatness. Giving our lives away in service to God and to others and to the world. We're given a life to spend it as best we can in service to those around us and in service to God. According to Jesus, if you and I want to be great, we need to accept our dignified role as servants. We're literally joining God in what he is as a servant. And it's a dignified role, friends. Sometimes servanthood is looked down on, and you think of, in the world system, servants of others and those that are pressed into service. But this is an invitation to willingly say, God, you created me to be a servant in the world. And as a servant, it's one of the most dignified roles I can accept, a servant of the Most High God. Put here to serve in the world, to give my life away, to serve those around me. Now, the selfish nature inside us wars against this identity. But Jesus said accepting this identity, humbling ourselves into this identity, is the pathway to greatness. And then learning to operate in this identity. That's that pathway to greatness. I want to encourage you today, as you think about your role as a servant, pay attention to your unique, God-given gifts and talents. Do you know you are uniquely designed? There's no one else like you in the history of the world. There's no one else like you. I'm standing in this shop, and I told you earlier that I was going to tell you why. I'm standing here because there's all these different kinds of tools. And all these different kinds of tools were created to be used for different things. And when I press them into service, they accomplish things. And it's the same. We have what you might call tool value before God. We have value just because we're made in his image and the price paid for us by Christ. But then he uniquely designed each of us for unique gifts, talents, strengths, abilities, ways of seeing the world like no one else in the history of the world. And your giftedness, your strengths, your talents were put inside of you for a specific purpose to accomplish specific things. All of us were, while we're here on the earth, so that we could live into that pathway and live out what God created for us to be. And serve and then be rewarded for our service by him, the one who really declares whether people are great or not. You are uniquely designed. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10 says, we are God's workmanship. He created us. He designed us to do things that he has prepared in advance for us to do. You know, there's when you look around the world, you say all human beings, and they're somewhat the same. And so you and I might just be kind of like this, round, and we're human beings. But we're so intricately designed. And that's why I'm in the workshop here. You know, you might be similar to someone else, but you're not even close to the same. There are some people that have said to me in the course of my lifetime, oh, you remind me of so-and-so, you remind me of so-and-so. But that might be true. There might be some similarities, but we're totally unique and different people. And you know, even the tools in the shop, there are some similar tools here. I have a couple vice grips right here. There's a needle nose vice grip, and then there's a smaller vice grip, and they're similar tools, but they're used differently for different things. Here's another set right here. I have a rubber mallet, a rubber hammer, and a regular hammer, and they're both hammers, but they're unique and different. And it's true with you and me. There is literally no one else like you, no one else like me in the world. You're gifted, you're talented in a special, unique way. Some people are gifted with the gift of giving. Others are gifted with the gift of administration. Some are gifted with the gifts of craftsmanship and helps. Some are gifted with hospitality. Some more in that administrative vein or preaching and teaching. And God says, as we work together, no one's normal. We're all out of round, uniquely talented and gifted by God. And my question for you today is, are you using whatever gifts and talents God has given you, spiritual gifts, natural gifts, to serve in the world? Somehow in giving our life away, our life comes back to us and we sense we're operating in just the way God created us to operate, and then God wants to bless that. If we humble ourselves, the Bible says, and take on the nature of a servant and give ourselves away, in due time, God himself will exalt us. And if not in this lifetime, in eternity, some of the first will be last and the last will be first. Jesus said this, the pathway to greatness is paved by people who accept themselves as servants in the world and figure out how they can give their lives away most strategically and best as God leads in the things that he designed us to do. Somehow, that text has inspired me for at least 18 years. If you want to become great, You must become a servant of others. And maybe it's because I'm a slow learner and God keeps bringing it back to me. But even as I studied it this past week and I'm bringing it to you now, I'm saying, God, make me the best servant I can be. Help me pay attention to the opportunities that are around me, to give my life away, encourage others, lift them up. We have some great letter writers. We have people who have great gifts of giving. We have hospitality people. And all of us need each other. Servanthood. It is an identity given to us by God as servants of His. The Apostle Paul said this, I am in chains. I'm a bondservant of the Lord. A deep part of our identity is to embrace the fact that God put us here to serve and to give our lives away. And as we do, there's a sense of operating in just the way He created us. And He's going to bless that giving in a way that you and I can't imagine. Thank you for all your service. So many of you in our community, thank you for your partnership in the ministry. Many of you are great letter writers. Some of you are great prayers. Other of you have done craftsman work. Some of you are great givers. We're just so thankful for all the service in our community. We ask that you'd help us continue to serve one another in love. This is the pathway to build up a great community and continue to flourish in the way God designed us to flourish. So let's keep it up as best we can. Let's be tender and kind, as Gary said, let's forgiving one another, being patient with each other, and then proactively saying, how can we serve? How can we care for each other with the stage of life we're in and the opportunities we have, the gifts we have? Let's pray together. Father, thank you for your teaching. Thank you for continually guiding us by your word. We can get off path. We can be pursuing the wrong things. We can be working to live selfishly, even as the disciples were. And then as we listen to your word, your Holy Spirit can bring us back into that pathway that's right. And we know that the pathway of servanthood, giving our lives away in service to those around us, intentionally, even proactively, is something that honors you and that you'll bless. Help us do this. And Father, if there are some listening today who haven't opened their heart to the gift of your Son, Jesus, coming down, taking on human form, and then becoming obedient to death on a cross for their sins and the forgiveness of their sins, help them open their heart to receive that great gift of forgiveness through the gift of Christ. Thank you for coming among us in Him. Thank you for His example for us. Give us ears to hear. Help us listen and follow in your ways. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.